Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me fine. My name is Juan Carlos Zúñiga, my co-chair Carlos Bernardos, and this is the Medinas meeting at IETF 116. So we're going to get started. So as usual, this is an IETF meeting, and therefore we are following the note well. And this is the reminders of the code of conduct and the rules that you need to follow. So remember that when you participate to an IETF meeting, you are following the process and policies. You're aware that your contribution is covered by the IP rules of IETF, and you acknowledge that written audio, video, and photographic records may be made public. Also, the personal information that you provide to the IETF will be handled in accordance with the IETF privacy statement. So if you have any questions or doubts, please take a look at the references that we're providing, which will give you more information about each one of these points. So for the remote participants, please make sure that your audio and video are off unless you are chairing or presenting during a session. And we recommend using a headset. So the agenda, this is a link. And if you need technical assistance or see the reporting issues page, that at the link that is displayed. So some reminders, the minutes will be taken. We are recording this meeting. Your presence will be logged. The blue sheets by logging into the data tracker. Oh, sorry. Just
USB-C. Okay.
no. Oh, no. Sorry. No, I needed something like this.
See.
Can I take that?
Are they, yeah, but you need it. Okay, I'll be right back.
Sorry. So for the chat room, there's a Zulip link, and we will need a minute taker. So can someone help us take in the minutes? Thank you, Shoichi. And everyone else, please contribute to the notes on the link that we have on the web page. So this is our agenda for today. We'll go through the usual status updates from the chairs. We'll move on to the use cases and problem statement document from Jerome, and you will then have an update about the MAC address randomization state of affairs document. And then we want to spend some time on the BCP handling RCM discussion. That I think it should be the core part of the meeting. So we'll try to get to that as soon as possible to have an open discussion on the latest emails that we've seen on the mailing list, as well as next steps. We will also have a status update from IEEE. We got the slides from Jerome, so that'll be presented showing some updates from 802.11b I and BH. We'll get an update also from the WBA about the host demonstrations demo, the open roaming demo that was presented yesterday during the reception. And we'll discuss next steps. So are there any questions or changes to the agenda? All right. So hearing none, uh, I guess we can move to the use cases and problem statement, Doc. Jerome, are you online and can you share?
I'm online. Hi, everybody. My name is Jerome Henry. Let me see
Uh,
if
we cannot hear you. You need to
you can hear me.
turn on your
Okay.
mic. Let me see if I can turn it on for you. Now?
Going to unmute again. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Oh, someone can hear?
Okay.
Yeah, Juan Carlos, at least myself, I can hear you.
Uh, Carlos, I can, yeah, we can hear you very, very faint.
You can hear something? Okay, you can hear me now, you say.
Oh, we hear you super low.
Super low. Okay. Mm,
A little better,
what about now?
much better.
Okay. All right. So it might be an input issue. Okay. Um, okay. So on this document, in fact, it will probably won't take 10 minutes. On this document, as you may remember, this document presents a framework for Madinas, where we define different actors, different environments, and different scenarios for RCM. We've been, presenting this document.
Um, sorry, Jerome. It's really, really low your volume. Can you pick up a little more?
Okay. I'm not sure what to do. What about now?
It's
Is
a
it
little
better?
better.
A little only?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. Carlos, can you speak up just to hear?
Yes, can you
Carlos
hear me?
Bernardo, say that again.
Can you
one,
hear
two,
me
one,
well?
two.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah, no,
I can
somehow
I
the
can hear
mouse volume
Jerome
is
very
very low.
well.
You can hear Jerome very well?
Yes, but I
Okay,
can
so we
also
have an
hear
issue here
myself.
with,
There is some kind of echo.
okay, all right. So
I
we
can
have
try
an
to
issue
switch
here
to another mic if
with the
you.
audio in the room then,
Yeah,
apparently. I don't know
that
if we
is
have
one of the
anyone
point of
from
views.
Miteco that could probably help us out. If you don't mind, keep talking, Jerome.
Yeah,
Maybe you
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah,
start
okay.
sharing your slides.
So, yeah, so we've been presenting this document for a few sessions now. So it hasn't undergone many changes for the last few iterations. You may remember that in yeah, am I good now? All right, beautiful.
Well,
You may remember that in IETF 115 we had a discussion with this about this document where we concluded that we should make a few changes which were fairly light. One of them was that in the section 6 there was a list of requirements that we've been carrying for a little while, and we concluded that these requirements were for the group, not for the document, so they were not belonging to this document. So there was a request to remove that section, which we did. There were a few editorial clarifications also that need to be done. And I think the main topic that we'll probably want to discuss today is that there is a section 7, which we started writing as a series of possible solutions to the RCM issue. That section, in fact, we concluded last time, also did not really belong to this document because this document was a use case and framework document, not a BCP. So there was a request that we should probably remove this section from the document, but once we have, of course, a BCP started. So we did all these editorial changes, removing the section that didn't belong to the document and the other editorial, but we kept the last section, section 7, which is, this series of recommendation, with the idea that we will remove it from the document once we have a BCP document. As some of you have noted, we've waited until the deadline for us to make the change because the document change is pretty stable now. Sorry, the document is pretty stable now, so there's not a lot of changes. And we were, hoping that there would be a start for the BCP that could be, shared with the list so that we could remove this last section entirely. But this BCP hasn't taken shape yet. So in the end, we made those changes. So now the document is fairly stable. So I don't know if there is much more that we can edit on it. But of course, everybody is very free to go and have a look and provide feedback.
So thanks, Jerome. I have a question. So you said the document is stable, but there's still the intention to take that section with the recommendations out of the document, right? And produce a BCP?
Absolutely, yes. That's, I think, our next fundamental step with this document. Remove section 7 entirely. And at that time, I think the document will reach stability, yes. But we suggest to do that only once we have a skeleton of a BCP. And in fact, maybe that's something we'll discuss together. Amelia and myself have started taking that section out and putting it into a skeleton of BCP so that we can make progress on the BCP as well. But it's a mere copy-paste effort that we've been undergoing so far. And once the group starts seeing that BCP and starts working on it, it will remove it entirely from that framework document, and it will reach stability then, I think.
All right. So I think well, it seems like indeed we will at that point have the stable document. Maybe we need to see exactly how it reads once that section goes away, and let's leave the BCP discussion for later on. We will have that discussion, and we can bring the emails that we've seen and your comments right now of your intention to publish something. We'll take that at that agenda item. But for now, assuming that section will be out, if anyone has any questions or suggestions on this document, please send them out on the mailing list. Okay, so I don't see anyone in the queue for now. Oh,
Sorry. Let me clarify that you haven't submitted the draft of your draft
I'm sorry.
repository.
Could you say your name before? So
Shoichi.
Yes.
Yes. Your BCP document, you haven't submitted it yet.
Correct.
To the
Yes,
repository.
absolutely. Yes. After discussion today, our plan is, if there are other contributors, to start sharing around. But you're perfectly correct. This document for now has not been shared anywhere. It's just I took that section and put it in another, XML file for now. That's pretty much the extent of it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Jerome. I don't see anyone else in the queue, so maybe we can move on to the next point, which is the MAC address randomization state of affairs.
Okay.
Wow, we hear you high and clear.
I guess that's good. I hope. Okay, so very quickly, this is an update of the randomized and changing MAC address state of affairs draft on behalf of my co-authors Juan Carlos and Amelia. So this is just a reminder of the goals of the document. So basically, it's to document what is being done regarding MAC address randomization at different SDOs, including IETF. Very, very quickly, the updates from the last IETF cycle. We, as agreed during the meeting, we have included a new policy in the taxonomy of MAC address selections policies, which is the per session generated MAC address, which is similar to some others, but with the particularity that is per session. So per session, you need to, or the device will rotate the MAC address, and every time that you have a new session, it will generate a new address. So no disconnection, because it's not per time base as, for example, the previous policy, the per period generated MAC address. This was discussed in IETF 115, and just basically we just introduced that. And then the other kind of main change was on the security considerations that we have included some text. And the last that I forgot to mention at the beginning change was on the title that now is a bit more aligned with what we have in the charter. There is still a point to discuss, which is whether to include the state of affairs in the title or not. It's kind of mentioned in the abstract, and we had some discussion internally, the co-authors. So maybe we would like to get some feedback on that, whether we should include the state of affairs in the title or is sufficient as it is right now. And then, well, this is the new selection policy that we have included, the last one that is on bigger letters. And this is basically the changes that I have just summarized. So once we have the feedback on the title, we believe that the document is stable enough. Maybe it could go to working group last call, probably after getting some reviews in the working group. If you are fine with that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So besides the title, you think the document is in good enough shape now for going to working group last call?
Yeah, I think it would be good if we get some reviews maybe before, at least one or two. But we can also go to working group last call directly. Up to, I don't know whether we should make the call being co-authors, or maybe Eric can help us to take the decision on this.
I guess, well, if we do go, then we'll see how to handle it. But I would like to have a sense from the group. So can people that have read that document raise their hand? Who? So one? Only one hand. So definitely we need reviews. And anyone interested in reviewing the document and providing comments? We're talking about now the MAC address randomization use state of affairs, the survey and the weight with the current structure. Anyone interested in reviewing or helping out with that? I see two hands, Alan and Shoichi. Okay, thanks. Three. Okay, so we have some people interested. So please, yeah, if you could take a look and send your comments, it'll be very useful to advance the document. And then once we have those comments, I guess we can decide on next steps for the document. Okay. Does anybody have any question for Carlos? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Carlos. Okay, so next is the BCP handling RCM discussions. Let me show this. All right, so moving on to the BCP handling RCM. As a reminder, this working group has three milestones. One of them is the first document that we heard, which is the use cases and requirements. The second one is the state of affairs regarding randomized and changing MAC addresses, and what we've seen on the field about current implementations. And the third one is a BCP, assuming that there's some suggested ways on how to address the specific use cases and the requirements of each one of these use cases. We want to provide best current practice document specifying how to handle each one of these use cases with existing solutions as described in the document. So right now, the only thing that we have for this BCP is the section that will be moved out from the requirements document onto a new BCP. And if I'm not mistaken, I've heard and I've seen on the mailing list, there's two proposals to to start that work. One came from Michael just recently, and we just heard Jerome and Amelia are also interested in working on this VCP. So the idea now is to open the discussion. I believe this is one of the key deliverables from the group. This was supposed to be a short-lived group, and we need to achieve the goal of that deliverable. So I'm glad to see that we have now candidates and skeletons being formed for this VCP. Something else that has been voiced before is that we're doing slow progress. So I guess if we have now volunteers for this work, we could foresee having more frequent discussions, especially if we have skeletons up, or we could call an interim meeting or something in a few weeks' time. So that'll be my input, I guess, as chair, trying to facilitate the discussion and achieve the goals. But at this point, I would like to open up the discussion for people to provide your views, suggestions. I don't know, for the people that have already voiced interest in participating for this VCP. Michael, Jerome, Amelia, do you have any feedback, anything you would like to share with the group about the intentions to do this? Okay, I see Amelia on the chat saying that we can cooperate with Michael, and then we have Jerome and Michael on the queue. So Jerome, do you want to start? Jerome, do you want to open up your mic? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. In fact, exactly as Amelia says, very glad to work with Michael on this document. Yeah, I think it's, as you say, it's the most important document we want to produce. And my view is that there are some solutions in the industry already, but also the section 7 we have in the document is very short. It's listing a few techniques that we know. This is a call for more input. We have a lot of scenarios where we have a lot of protocols at the IETF that were defined that may be affected by RCM. And I think that brushing solutions should also include those. So I'll call for input, and of course, Michael, very happy to work with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerome. Michael?
Hi, thanks. Guess I can turn on the video if you like. I put up two use cases. I think there's probably that we can write a recommendation on what to do instead, and how to do things. I think that I've heard that there's some Wi-Fi Alliance proposal. I've heard there's some IEEE stuff about putting identifiers somewhere. I don't have details. I'm very concerned that they will be poor hacks to try to maintain a status quo of really poor encryption and really poor privacy. And I think that this is actually the time to say, you know what, it's time to stop doing the 1990s silliness and get on with real identities and with privately used identities. So I that's my opinion. What I don't know, and we read in some of the use case and other stuff, is that MAC addresses are used in other places, and I don't have a big enough and better enough understanding of the details. My knowledge is essentially at the Wi-Fi home coffee shop scenario. So I think that there's going to be some pushback into getting some more details really clearly articulated to what's going on at things. So I mean, talking to L2 VPN systems, something else like that. There's got to be a bunch of stuff like that happens. I know I have some switch equipment that I've mercifully just removed from production, where it has an unusually low number of MAC addresses in its TCAM, and it just falls over when we start doing randomized addresses on Wi-Fi, and so there's stuff like that where there's something happening in a core network with MAC addresses, and once you start multiplying them, the network falls over. And the answer is, don't do whatever you're doing, but I don't know what they're doing and what's the problem. So I think we have a lot of details that we need to get back out from some of those providers, from those other protocol people, to figure out what to suggest.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. You were up, but you were not in the queue, but I recognize you. So if you want to go.
Okay, this is Alan DeCock. Yeah, to answer some of your questions, Michael, Nancy has a draft which hasn't really gone much of anywhere. I mean, there's no progress because there needs to be progress and we need to figure out where. The issue with solving some of this is we need input from both the IETF and the IEEE. And from the point of view of operators, and at least the ones I talk to, no one really cares what the MAC address is. They just want a persistent device identifier. And so if the MAC address changes 30 times a minute, that's perfectly fine. And so the question is, where does this document live? Who pushes it forward, et cetera? So I am aware of this. We are working together with people to try and get this moved forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bob?
Hi, I'm Bob Hinden. So, yeah, I mean, this just seems to me like this is the hard part. Like, what do we actually do? I have no idea. Doing an identifier is hard. And then to not just recreate the problem, the reason people went to random MAC addresses in the first place, if you create a hard identifier, then you're just cycling back around. So I don't know what the solution is, but this is much harder than anything else this group has done. So I think that's what you have to talk about. It's like, what actually work do you want to take on? Is this the right place in the IETF? Again, I just have questions, but it's really the questions I've had about the working group in the first place. What is the IETF actually going to do something here, or is it, or is the world just going to evolve the way it seems to be?
So I let me just react that before getting back to the queue. So indeed, the scope of this group was to try to figure that out, and we are aware of work going on in IEEE 802 in the WBA, Wireless Broadband Alliance, and we're tasked to talk to them and ideally avoid any overlaps or duplication of work. So it's true that the big picture is where does that identifier live, because we are not supposed to go below layer 3 and they are not supposed to go above layer 2, and then that's the common thing that happens between IEEE and 802. But ideally, at least we are working together and we can figure out the best way. And that's part of why we have the next two presentations coming from status update from IEEE 802 as well as the WBA. But sorry for stepping in. Let me just get back to the queue. Amelia?
Hi, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Super high.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is Amelia. I wanted to address see if I'm able to make this more bearable for people in the room and elsewhere.
That's fine now.
So I think what me and Jerome have been discussing are a few ideas on how to ensure that you can have a persistent but private identifier, at least for some of the use cases. And I imagine that as we progress with discussing a best current practices document inside of this working group, we might identify other other practices that could address use cases that me and Jerome have not so far explored. And so I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric?
Eric, the responsibility for this group, and the responsible guy for raising the volume in the room to hear the remote. So now we are a little bit too loud. Anyway, so just reply to you, Bob. This working group is being chartered not to do any protocol work. So the most we can do is BCP. Next step are different.
Okay. Yeah, the good point. Thanks for clarifying that. So indeed, we have not identified an issue. If we do, then we can figure out if it's up to us or IEEE 2 or whom to respond to that. But that's true. We don't have a.
Yeah, so just let me just respond to that a little bit. I mean, I don't care whether it's a protocol here, but there has to be some ideas for what the approach, what do we want to do to solve this problem? I don't know what that is. And I think that's sort of the, how do you solve the problem and not recreate the original problem that this, the reason we're talking about this.
Thanks. I see Dan.
Yeah, Dan Harkins. To address what Michael was saying, yeah, some of the stuff that the IEEE is working on, you could probably qualify as a hack. And if that scares you, then I don't want to say join the IEEE, but it is important to express what requirements you have. One of the things that they're talking about in the IEEE is using it's still going to look like a random MAC address from the local address space, but it's going to be using some predictable formula so that the network will know what the next MAC address this client is going to use will be. This would not help Michael's problem where his switches are falling over because too many random MAC addresses, because if it can't handle a lot of MAC addresses in its table, then it's definitely going to fall over with this scheme. So I think it's important that if there are certain requirements that people have, that they kind of percolate up and get known to the people that are going to be coming up with these solutions, so they don't end up being hacks that don't really solve their problems.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. So a lot of good feedback, and again, we have a couple of presentations now coming up, giving an update about what's going on in 802 11BH in BI. So we'll have a little more clarity of what's happening there, and we will also have an update from WBA about other work that is happening regarding the open roaming. So probably what I would suggest is move on to those items so that we have that better understanding. And as I said, the intention would be to follow up this discussion probably in an interim meeting where we dedicate a little more time about what exactly we want to do regarding this BCP. So do you have any more questions at the moment before moving on to the IEEE status update? Okay, seeing none. Jerome, would you like to share?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. It's coming up, I hope.
All right, thank you. All right.
Do you mind actually? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you're sharing the whole screen.
Yeah, it's taking a little bit. So yeah,
Yeah, we can see your whole screen, but we see your Mitico screen.
You should see it now, right?
No, so Probably it's easier if you do share and then you say up preloaded the slides and then you choose your presentation. That is the fastest way. That way you don't upload.
Would you mind sharing the slides so I don't waste people's time?
Sure.
Thank you. And while you do so, yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if I would call it a hack. Next slide, please. But at the IEEE, there are two groups that are working on this RCM issue. The first one is 11BH. And I take the word hack because the idea here was to say RCM is happening. It may have some effect or some impact on 802.11 operations. And the 802.11bh groups was intended to be a short-lived group to, come through 802.11, check if there were any impact on 802.11, and see if they could find a solution to address these issues introduced by RCM. Next slide, please. It turns out that the group is not going as fast as planned, but it already has a first scheme whereby the access point can, during the association of a secure connection to the client, send a blob, a protected blob. I use here Dan's terminology, which is an identifier for that station. And then on the next association or upon roaming to a next access point, the station can, if it chooses to do so, re-express that blob, that identity back to the access point, so as to maintain its identity as it moves or as it disconnects and connects back. So that scheme has a great advantage of being under the control of the station. So it's very, very efficient because the station is in control of its privacy. It's nice because the blob itself is not something which is constrained yet by 11BH, which means that it can be very flexible. Now, the group is looking at other scheme, and in fact, there's a lot of debate going on about pre-association recognition. That's a theme that's been going on in BH for a while now, where some folks are saying there are some scenarios where you need to recognize the station before it associates to the network. This is debated heavily because in 802.11 there is not much of that notion that the station should be known somehow before it asks for a service from the infrastructure. So there is a lot of ongoing conversation that kind of tend to loop a little bit in some cases. And also there are some discussions about what this blob should be, if the scheme that was proposed should be the only scheme. Some folks are asking that the identifier would not be a MAC address. For practically in the IEEE implementation reasons, if it's a MAC address, it needs to be spun into the driver in real time. It may be complicated. Some other folks are saying, yeah, it could be a MAC address. Some others say it's preferable if it's an information element that carries an identity, regardless of what MAC address is being used by the station. So there is a lot of discussions there. So much so that, in fact, the work of the group, which was supposed to be completed by now, is still ongoing. And for now, the current target is to get some document completed by mid-2024. So that's BH. There's another group, next slide please, which is 11BI, which is active at the IEEE. And here the goal is different. The goal is not to say RCM is happening, let's see if we have something to fix. The goal here is to say Wi-Fi or 802.11 operations by themselves were not designed with privacy in mind. Let's see if we can improve the privacy of 802.11 operations. Next slide. So that's a longer work item. It's going to be released in 2026-ish. So far, the group is making good progress. What it's done is list a certain number of requirements. So far, there are 54 requirements that can be classified in 11 categories. But for the purpose of our conversation here, because this is very 802.11 centric, they envision two types of privacy issues. Primarily the station issue, where your device is a personal device and you may want to protect its privacy, of course. But they also envision that some access points may be also personal devices, say, for example, in your home or virtual AP on your laptop. So they define this notion of station protection, but also entire cell, including the access points privacy protection. It is clear from the direction of the group that implementing those schemes will require new exchanges in 802.11 that are not existing today and probably not compatible with what is today because they will be obfuscating things which are in the clear today. So it's likely that there will need to be, new modes defined to define those operations in a way that can be conducive to privacy. But the work is still ongoing, and if you're interested, I'd like to encourage you, as we heard before, to participate to the IEEE effort as well. There's a standard a draft that is being worked on with submissions as we speak. It should come, within a few months with the first version of the draft, and that's what's happening in the IEEE.
Okay, thank you very much for that update, Jerome. So I see Eric.
So Eric Nordmark, so on BH, are they looking into, it seems like that mechanism could potentially be used to completely remove the benefits of randomized MAC addresses, because as long as you feed the same blob, whatever it is, right, now I can actually track that stuff across a whole operator of a bunch of access points. So are they considering that as part of the problem statement, saying that how do you provide something to the device so it can implement the reasonable policy to decide when it's not going to reuse the same blob, and saying, I want to consider myself being new here because there's a chicken and egg here that I walk into a coffee shop and I turn on my laptop. It's going to feed the same blob that it used at a coffee shop at the other side of the country or at the conference here across the street, right? You might not want to do that, but you need information to be able to decide that. So are they looking into that part of the problem, or are they saying, no, we're just fixing this short-term thing?
Dan, do you want to respond to
that? Dan Hargan. So I wrote the submission to define how the blob gets generated. And the idea is that for a network, you'll have a persistent ID, and the network will share a symmetric key. All the APs in the network share a symmetric key. And what happens is, my first association, I'm going to say who I am, and this is an encrypted communication. What the AP is going to do is take my identity, pad it, and encrypt it with a symmetric key, and basically turn it into randomized garbage and give that back to me. And that's what I use the next time I try and associate to a different access point in the network. I'm going to give this blob, for lack of a better word, and the new access point will be able to decrypt it and go, oh, this is Eric. Okay, fine. And now that I know you're Eric, I'm going to re-encrypt it, repad it, re-encrypt it with some new salt, and I'll give it back to you. And now you'll have a new randomized blob. It will decrypt to Eric again, but it'll look completely different. So every time you associate to the network, you're producing your identity blob is going to be. It's going to look to an attacker as just a random string of bits.
As long as the association succeeds. If it fails, I will wander around town sending the same blob to everybody, right? As long as it never succeeds again.
To APs in that network, yes.
Okay.
But I'm assuming every AP in the town is not on the same network, right? So it's like, yeah. Different SSID, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Jerome? Comments? Okay, so thanks a lot, Jerome, for that. So I guess we can move on to the next presentation. That'll be the open roaming experiment summary and the open roaming presentation from WBA, Jonah, and Soichi.
Hi, Juan Carlos. How are you?
Hey, we hear you fine. Thanks.
Is it okay if you bring these slides up for me? Fine.
Yeah, I just put them on. Do you see them?
Ah, yes, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, hi everyone. So, yeah, my name is Jonah Ross. I'm from the Wireless Broadband Alliance, and I'm the Open Roaming Program Manager. I am based in London. But yeah, thanks for having me on today. So, if we go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, this is the agenda. I don't think we'll have time to cover everything. I'm only going to go through a few of these slides. So, I think we can just jump past this into the next one. Okay, so for those of you that don't know what open roaming is, it's basically a seamless and secure and private network that will allow users onto open roaming networks pretty much seamlessly. So as you can see that from our first point, so yeah, seamless, secure, and private open roaming it's basically the concept of providing users with secure access to public Wi-Fi networks without having to register or log in. So what does that mean? It pretty much means that the users can connect to a public Wi-Fi network and access the internet without having to enter any personal information or passwords and go through that tedious captive portal process that we all pretty much hate. So yeah, the technology works by allowing users to connect to a secure server that is managed by the service provider, and then securely connecting them to a public Wi-Fi network. So the secure connection allows users to access the internet without any risk of personal data being compromised. And then in addition to that, users can also benefit from the additional security features such as encryption, authentication, which will of course help to protect data from being accessed or stolen. So yeah, if we go to the next slide. Okay, excellent. So as you can see here, we pretty much put it in a 1-to-4 format. So in terms of open roaming, so the identity federation architecture and legal framework that caters to different business models, but it all falls under the same umbrella. So if we now take a look at the diagram on the right hand side, we can see it's a pretty basic architecture and it's very simple in terms of how it works. So we have the open roaming identity federation, and then to the right of that we have the identity providers in the cloud. So the identity provider is the profile which goes onto the device, which is going to allow you onto, on the right hand side, the Wi-Fi network, the Wi-Fi access network. Any third-party IDP can be downloaded onto the device, as long as that profile that is being downloaded onto the device is broadcasting a set of roaming consortium OI codes. So the ARCway goes onto the device, and the ARCway is also being broadcasted on the controller, and that is how you are going to seamlessly connect to that network. As you can see there in the middle, so the authentication and accounting, so the radius, accounting radius, that is all done directly on the controller. You can either proxy to, let's say, a cloud connector, or you can do it through the Cisco. You can link it through your DNA spaces to your Cisco dashboard, if you will. In terms of point 3, so dynamic policy at the edge enables real-time and ad hoc roaming agreements. So yeah, the agreements are already in place. And then yeah, proxy service to connect to cloud and web IDs to network services. So that's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's pretty much how it works. It is pretty straightforward in terms of how it works. And yeah, I know now Juan Carlos and co have done a demo that was a success yesterday. So hopefully many of you got to sort of experience this firsthand. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so yeah, in terms of MAC randomization, so yeah, many Wi-Fi networks have relied on the original components of device MAC addresses to facilitate access to the management of the network. So without a new way to pretty much identify devices on Wi-Fi networks, the networks will pretty much cease to be as manageable or as functional as they were. So this will basically have customer experience impacts as well as financial ones. So the introduction of per SSID daily and per session MAC randomization to Wi-Fi networks is pretty much designed to improve the privacy of a user, but it can, of course, cause problems for the provisioning of services that will need to uniquely identify the devices or the users in those cases, which is then used for a proxy for the identity of the user. So yeah, within the WBA now, there has been ways to identify randomized MAC addresses as an impact on deployments for Wi-Fi networks, and has also been in contact with the standard organizations to address the issues surrounding MAC randomization. But as you can see here, so yeah, on the network side, so visibility onto visitor onboarding, visitor identities and analytics across applications that rely on MAC addresses. And then on the right-hand side, in terms of the user, so yeah, of course, it's used for privacy and having a persistent identifier that allows for tracking even if you have not authenticated onto the network. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, this reverts back pretty much to the slide 3 that I was just going over. So step 1, authentication is of course private. So IDP goes onto the device, and that is that. In terms of step 2, user and devices are identified in context. So on the right there, you can see the string of text followed by an at wballiance.com, or the user ID would be your name, which is going to be your name, and then at wballiance.com. So that could be anything. So it could be Jonah at cisco.com or blah, blah, blah. So that's pretty clear. In terms of step 3, so identity providers share identities on behalf of the users. So as I mentioned, IDP goes onto the device, and that's going to connect you seamlessly to the Wi-Fi network. So yeah, the IDP manages identities and the privacy of the user. And then in terms of step 4, the privacy with user consent. So users control privacy. Identifiers are always persistent. So yeah, it can be a random string of text to sort of protect your user, or you can have your email visible and out there. So yeah, there are different avenues to discuss, and there's different situations to deploy. So yeah, if we go to the next slide. Okay, so this is now the slide on the demo that was done on Sunday. So yeah, perhaps I can hand over to Shichoi, and I think he can go through this slide.
Hi, Soichi, can you?
Yep.
Maybe here, yeah, if you don't mind. Just. Oh, maybe you can have to turn it on. Yep. No.
Yes. So I'm Soichi. I don't explain yesterday what I did, but before that, how many people did show this demo yesterday? Raise a hand. 1. 2. Right, thank you very much. So what I did is that I prepared the 2 access points to. Yeah. The one is to broadcast the cafe, and another one is broadcast the IETF. But in the same time, I enabled one of each.
Sorry. Can people hear Soichi well on the remote?
Remote?
Can people remotely hear the presenter well?
It's a bit loud.
Yes, although it's not very clear. It's a bit too loud or saturated a bit, I think.
Okay. Thanks. Please.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I did? Yes. So yeah. So first of all, you need to install the credential on your phone or PC. So so if you have so it depends on your phone. So if you have the Android, Samsung, or the Pixel of Google, you don't need to you don't need to do any application because it's already natively support the open roaming. But if you use the for example iPhone, you need some application. So we prepare the application to install the credential. So if you search the open roaming in App Store, you can see the application. And then after you install your credential of your ID, you need to remove the SSID for other access Wi-Fi access point, because if you have that, maybe your device will connect to that SSID, for example, IETF. So so the second step, you need to remove the all SSID. So after that, you can connect your device automatically connect to the open roaming SSID, such like a cafe. And then next step is if I turn off the cafe and then turn on the IETF. So if your device automatically connects to another one SSID, it's seamlessly and then securely. So that is the open roaming, the technology by the hotspot 2.0 mechanism. That is what I showed yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much, Shoichi. So just so that people are aware, so we've been discussing with the WBA about this technology, and we want people to understand and try it. So we have this the intention we've been discussing for a couple of meetings to set it up as an experiment in the IETF network. So right now the plan would be to enable it so that people can see it and play with it at the next meeting. There's a process to get an experiment in the IETF, so that's why it couldn't be done for this time. But with a collaboration with WBA, the plan is to set it up at the next meeting so that people can play with it. Michael, I see you in the queue.
So can you tell us technically, not in marketing terms, what's actually happening? Is it EAP TLS? Do you have a certificate? You say I log in with my Google ID, but there's no certificate in that part. EAP over radius, but what? What method?
Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes, we can hear you, Jonah. We hear you,
Hello?
Jonah.
Hello?
Yes. Jonah, do you want to take that?
I guess he can't hear us.
No. Jonah?
I seem to have lost audio. If you can't
Yeah,
hear
there's a
me.
button on the, well, he can't hear us. Tell us there's a button to reconnect. Anyway.
Okay.
Okay, well, maybe someone will be able to relay that to him and he can post it on the list. Are these slides going to get
Hello?
posted?
The slides are posted.
They're posted already. Okay, they were not earlier. Thanks.
I
Well,
can't seem to hear you,
I'm
Juan
excited
Carlos,
to
from my
hear
side.
about
I seem to
this,
have lost audio.
more details about what's going on.
Thanks. So, Jonah, can you hear us now? Jonah, can you hear us? Okay. Okay, so we have an issue. I guess the best thing would be to take it to the list because we're running out of time here. So then I think in the last 2 minutes, we're going to talk quickly about the next step. So as I said, right now, WBA is proposing to coordinate with this group to run an experiment at the coming IETF meeting. And of course, we're planning to meet at IETF117 in San Francisco. But besides that, I guess with the discussions on the BCP, we would propose having an interim meeting. It's been discussed before, and probably it's a good idea to have one in some 3-4 weeks time. If that's okay, maybe we will coordinate with the key stakeholders and participants and of course the authors. I think that's key to have them. But the idea would be to host or request an interim meeting in some 4 weeks time, if that's okay. And in the meantime, of course, if anyone has questions, please send them to the list. I think it'll be important to advance the discussion and the questions about the technology and proposals about the next steps that we want to take. Okay, so I see at least Michael interested in having the interim meeting. And we'll look, I guess, for a right time to do so. And for now, well, if there are no any other points, I think this would be the end of the meeting. All right. Thanks, everyone. And we'll be talking about this next meeting soon. Take care.